Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. So, it's definitely been a while since I've been able to watch and talk about a Wes Anderson movie. The reason why for that was my dad and I have been like slowly ordering these on DVD. We probably should have just bought like 10 of these like in the first place, but we've been ordering them like 2 to 3 at a time, and that's been like a whole thing. Because we already had the ones for like the Grand Budapest Hotel and Moonrise Kingdom, and then I ended up finding the Life Aquatic at like a swap meet or something. So we got really lucky with the timing of like a couple of them, and then we bought like 2 or 3 on DVD. Specifically Rushmore and Fantastic Mr. Fox. I'm not kidding. I've had to wait like 3.5 months to be able to like have these movies finally come in. We ordered them in November, and it was this whole thing with trying to get them off Amazon where it was like something happened to the truck, they were out of stock. It literally said they were like undeliverable for a while. We had to order a new copy of Fantastic Mr. Fox, and then it came within like a week, but it was a used copy that I don't think even works all the time. Rushmore seems to work okay though. That one turned out good. So it's been like this whole thing. I've been wanting to watch these two movies so bad. I've already seen them before. Fantastic Mr. Fox, from what I remember, is one that I really, really liked. Rushmore, I couldn't completely remember. It's like definitely been a while since I've seen it. But yeah, I had wanted these reviews to be like a little bit more closer to the other ones, but yeah, because I had to wait for the DVDs. It took quite a while, but they're here now. I get to watch them. I at least got to watch Rushmore. Rushmore was not worth the wait, in my opinion. I'd already seen it before. My dad, I think, had also seen this, but neither of us really remembered a lot of stuff from it. I think we both had the same opinion that we liked it and also didn't really like it. Because part of the plot is that there's this 15-year-old who falls in love with this teacher at his school, which I first thought was a high school, but they also have like first graders there too. It's probably one of those, it's like elementary to high school or something, and he falls in love with her, and even when she tells him like, yeah, you're 15, there's like no way in hell that I would date you or anything, he just does not get up. Even after he's been rejected like multiple times, he's still kind of trying to go after her, and that's part of the main reason I don't really like this movie. It's like kind of uncomfortable, and she's like a really nice and this teacher character, I think her name's Miss Cross or something, is like really nice and way too forgiving, where I feel like she should have had a restraining order on this kid, or like called the cops at least once or something, because it was getting to the point where he like found out where she lived and like faked being in a car accident just to be able to come inside. And it got kind of weird. I mean, the main thing I remembered from this movie is it's not just this 15-year-old that's trying to date her, but also Bill Murray's character, who I think kind of looks a bit too old for her. He looks like he's like middle-aged, and she looks pretty young. I mean, of course that's better because they're both like legal adults, and I think it's sort of hinted they might get together at the end or something. But his character is this guy who's already married, and he has like 2 kids that are like Max's age or something, so it's a little more like so like neither of these people are like really good options for this woman, honestly, and they spend not as much as I remember of the movie's runtime trying to compete for her affections, even though she doesn't really want either of them. But it's also, I just feel so bad for this woman. She is grieving her husband that she loved very, very much, that she lost literally like a year ago, and both of the other characters know this and are aware of this, and they almost seem kind of mad at her in a way of like, oh, she's not gonna date us because she's in love with the dead guy. He's dead, why don't you like basically get over it? It's like basically the way they talk to her, and it's like, first off, she's grieving her husband, and second, it's like literally only been a year. Yeah, she's probably not gonna be open to dating again. It's not like completely the main plot of the movie, but that is, or I mean, it kind of is mostly. It's kind of like a lot of things going, or not like a lot of things going on, but more like there's other things, but it's kind of more the driving force of the movie. So I feel like it's kind of like teens having crushes on their teachers, you know, as just like a simple crush or whatever. Okay, sure, she is very pretty after all, but the lengths that the main character Max, the 15-year-old, goes to is where it just gets really creepy. There's this part where he tries to kiss her and she like pushes him off, where it's just like, okay, you need to get this guy the hell away from you. And even at the end, still they end up where he's like, oh, can we be friends or something, and she keeps saying yes and whatever, and it's like icky, and part of the reason I don't like this one. And then Bill Murray's character doesn't really do well either, where it's like him and Max at one point in the movie, which is the part I kind of mostly remembered, where they get into these pranks with each other, but it ends up getting to the point where it gets really dangerous, where they take the brakes out of somebody's car and the car almost crashes, and Max actually does get arrested for that. I'm surprised Max actually doesn't get arrested more than once. He's like a little hellion almost. I don't know if that's the right word, where you assume he's probably a really smart kid because he starts up all of these. Okay, it's called Rushmore. I should probably get more information. It's called Rushmore because there's this like school for rich kids called Rushmore Academy, and Max has always gone there to the point where he's never gone to a public school. He's not from a rich family or anything. His dad is a barber. He doesn't have a mom. I feel like actually that him losing his mom when he was young thing might also influence him trying to pursue this teacher, but I don't know. Anyway, I think because she's like a little more maternal towards him in a sense. Anyway, he is at the school, I think, from just like an academic scholarship or something. He's actually their worst student, and he's in charge of all of these clubs. He like refers in the movie to Rushmore kind of being like his life, basically. It's kind of all he knows, but it's mostly because he's like a very on the go person, and on one hand he is very accomplished. He writes like several plays throughout the movie that all end up, I think, being successes and stuff, and he starts all these clubs. Like, it's on one hand it's all of these things, of these extracurricular activities. There's so many of them, and the amount of clubs that he starts and whatever, that it would look fantastic on like a college resume or something, or whatever, or application, not resume. But on the other hand, his grades are shitty. And at first I was thinking like, oh, okay, it's, and the characters talk about it too, of like, oh, okay, it's just because he's an extracurricular activity, so many of them, if he drops some of them, maybe his grades would just improve. But no, even when he ends up being expelled from the school from having bad grades, and he ends up having to go to a public school, his grades are still bad, and then he ends up needing tutoring, and he doesn't have any extracurricular activities. So it really is just that he's not really, like, he's a very smart person, don't get me wrong, but like academically his grades kind of aren't really the best. And the characters talk about him in a way of like, oh, you set yourself so high, but you can never really kind of meet any of those expectations. But he's still like an interesting character in the fact that he's this 15-year-old that's basically running in circles around the principal or whatever of Rushmore, where Max is doing all these things and whatever, and doesn't really kind of give a shit what anyone thinks. Or he ends up, I think, trying to get an aquarium built at the school, and he almost gets away with it, but the principal ends up stopping him or whatever, and he does eventually get an actual aquarium built. Because Max's thing is sort of superpower, if you will, is just being so on top of like what needs to be done, where he'll have like contractors to build things and kind of have just all of these connections. It gets really crazy. It's like kind of weird to watch, where it's like he's 15, he's like very young, but he talks and acts very much almost like a small adult in a sense, like he's more on top of things than like most adults are. I don't really know how to describe it exactly. So yeah, it's kind of the movie is like his fall, basically, where he starts off, you know, going to this school and he has all these clubs and everything, and then the principal guy's like, hey, your grades are shit, if you don't improve them you're gonna get expelled. And you think like, oh, okay, he's gonna try to improve his grades, but then he gets distracted by something with this library book, and it leads to him meeting this teacher, and he gets a crush on her immediately, and he ends up starting more extracurricular activity clubs, and he ends up basically putting all his energy that he normally would have in starting the clubs and maintaining them more into trying to impress this teacher, of trying to get like an aquarium built at the school. And like at first it's sort of like, okay, he's doing some of these nice things of like getting more fish for her school classroom or whatever, but then he starts doing stuff like building the aquarium in her honor as like a way to kind of win her over, even though she never asked him that or showed, like, he tries to do all of these things for her throughout the movie, even after she rejects him multiple times. And she even has to tell him at the end, like, hey, I didn't ask you guys to build me an aquarium, because eventually Max and oh gosh, what Bill Murray's character, I think his name's Herman. Yeah, his name's Herman. They eventually build like an aquarium at the end of the movie in her honor, the Mrs. Cross's, and she's like, hey, I didn't ask you guys to build this aquarium for me, that was your thing. 'Cause they end up getting mad at her of like, you didn't show up to the ribbon cutting ceremony or whatever. And that's like the whole thing, is the both of them are like very childish in a way of like they're trying to impress her and compete with each other for her affection, but she doesn't ask them to do any of these things, and is kind of more weirded out of like, okay, why are they going to all this effort for me, rather than, you know, they expect her to be impressed or anything. But I like that they even set up from the beginning that Max, it just kind of craves other people's attention basically, and wanting them to see him as super cool. Like the movie I think starts off with this dream of him solving this impossible math question or whatever, and everyone cheers him on, and then you see he's actually asleep at like a church meeting or something, because it's showing in his dream that he's like smarter than everyone, but also that everyone likes him and thinks he's like the greatest, and none of those things are true actually. But he's also like just he's like a people person. I mean, no. Yeah, he's like a people person in the sense that he's like very manipulative and can kind of just always get people to do what he wants, but he also just doesn't really have any friends. And he has one friend. I need to talk about his friend actually. So there's this character named Dirk, and Max is like his mentor or something. I think whoever the kid is, I mean, not a kid anymore. This movie's from actually, when is this movie from? This movie's from 1998. Okay, that makes sense actually, because Jason Schwartzman, he's the actor that plays Max. You know, he's playing a character that's 15. He looks like he's probably like 17 or something. And in every other Wes Anderson movie I've seen him in, he's like more of a grown adult basically, and that always threw me off. But yeah, this movie being from 1998, and most of the Wes Anderson movies I've seen being from like 2004 onwards, that makes sense. Anyway, yeah, there's a character named Dirk. He's this kid that Max is mentoring. They end up not being friends for a while, and then they end up being friends again. It's like a whole thing. Dirk is kind of like Max's sidekick. The kid that plays Dirk, I hope he got to continue acting or something. He was my favorite performance in this whole movie, of just the way he plays this kid, where when you first see him, oh yeah, I should mention, because this relates to what I'm going to say, my mom was actually also watching this movie with us. It was me, my dad, and my mom. My mom doesn't care about Wes Anderson. It's my dad and I. This is like the only sort of, I guess you could call it movie series. They're all by the same director. You know, the Wes Anderson movies. It's like kind of the only movie thing my dad and I like specifically do together. But my mom was here for this one, and she was saying how Dirk, as you were watching, because Dirk eventually has this part where he like spits on somebody's car out of anger or whatever, and my mom's like, he looks so sweet and angelic or whatever. And I was thinking the same thing, honestly. He's this very like sweet looking little kid, or not like little, he looks like he's like 12 or 11 or something. He's at least like younger than Max, but he has times, not where he's like evil or anything, but it's like he has like a very sweet looking face, and then you see he's a lot more kind of more mature than Max is, or kind of more emotionally stable, I should say. Oh, hold on, I have to sneeze. Okay. Okay, I'm good. Yeah, more kind of emotionally stable and kind of more mature than Max is in a way. There's a couple times I could think of, like there's this part when once Herman starts going after Mrs. Cross, and Dirk is like a really good spy, actually. He wait, is his name? Yeah, okay, his name is Dirk. I have the Google the cast page open. I feel like I need to do that more for movies because I'm like constantly getting names wrong, and I'm pre-recording this, so there will be more names in the future for movies and actors and stuff and characters I'm going to get wrong. I just need to admit that. Yeah, there's a part when Dirk, he's like spying on Herman even though Max didn't tell him to or anything, and it's like one of the first scenes I saw with Dirk where I was like, okay, I'm actually interested in this character now. Where he stands in front of Herman's car because Herman's driving and Dirk's in front of the car, which forces Herman to stop, and Dirk's like, I know what you and the teacher are doing. He gets like really serious, not in like a scary way because he's like 12 or whatever, but you know, he gets kind of serious, and Herman's taking him seriously because Herman is, you know, married and he's interested in this other woman and stuff. And Dirk is like, yeah, I'm not going to tell Max because we're friends. And then, oh yeah, there's this Scottish kid. I think his name's Angus. I don't remember. And I am checking the page. Is his name? Oh, his name's Magnus, not Angus. I'm sorry. Yeah, his name's Magnus? Really? Hold on. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I forgot this movie's from 1998. They're showing a picture that the actor, where it's saying he's 51, and I'm like, wait, that doesn't sound right, but no, I think this is right. Yeah, his name's Magnus. He's kind of a jerk, honestly. He's like this sort of bully character. Not like he physically beats up Max or anything, actually, except one time he punches Max and Max absolutely deserved it. But he is the bully character that he makes fun of Max. They're kind of like rivals in a sense, and he tells Dirk something that Max admitted, and it pisses off Dirk, and Dirk tells Max like, hey, Herman's going after your girl or whatever, you know, and it starts this whole competition between the two. So Dirk's like really important in the plot. But eventually, I just keep thinking about this part where he's, because Max's dad, he works as a barber, like I mentioned at the beginning, even though Max lies to everyone, because he's trying to seem more impressive than he actually is. He tells his peers and whatever, like, yeah, my dad's a neurosurgeon. No, his dad's a barber. And the Dirk shows up to the barber shop. Max is working there at one point, and I just keep thinking about how he sits in this chair, in the barber chair, and like spins himself to reveal himself, and he's posed in a way like a movie villain or like a cartoon movie villain, and that just has not left my head ever since I've seen the movie. But yeah, Dirk can be surprisingly like really serious sometimes, and it's just performed really well, honestly. But yeah, Magnus is also one of my favorites, where he has some like really funny lines, and there's this part at the end where he finally gets to be in one of Max's plays, because not that he expresses that interest throughout the movie or anything, but at the end when Max is kind of being a bit nicer to everybody, he's like, hey, you should be in my play, and Magnus is like, I've always wanted to be in one of your plays, and he does a great job in it, actually. You know, that's actually something interesting to me with this movie. I'm kind of just thinking about as I'm talking about it, because throughout the movie I was so focused on Max and his journey of kind of growing up a little bit. I think this movie takes place in like 4 or 5 months or something, and he goes through a lot of stuff there, but like the other characters all kind of sort of find their path as well. I find that really interesting. Like Magnus ends up in one of Max's plays, like I mentioned. He turns out to be really good at it, and Herman has these 2 twin sons that are kind of very rowdy and not really the smartest of people. No, they're kind of just like stinkers, honestly. and it turns out they end up going to military school or something, which is probably a good place for them to put all their energy. They're also like kind of a bit buff from what I remember. And Miss Cross ends up at like another school. Because Max, like I said, I feel so bad for her. Not just the stuff with her like dead husband, but also these two goobers, as my parents called them, pursuing her. And she ends up transferred to like an all-girls school or whatever, and she seems to be, I think, dating Herman at the end, or like possibly they could be a bit interested in each other, which, I mean, as long as she didn't somehow end up with Max at the end, I was going to be okay with no matter what happened to her. I mean, I feel like I wish she didn't end up with either of them at the end, especially because there's a character in the movie named Peter, who's played by Luke Wilson. I remember Luke Wilson in a lot of the earlier Wes Anderson movies, so that's why I figured, like, okay, this is probably one of the older ones. I just couldn't remember what year. He plays a character named Peter, who I thought was going to be more plot relevant, but he's not. Not that he's introduced as, like, Miss Cross's love interest or anything. I thought maybe they were hinting at that at first, where she brings him on this, like, celebration dinner for one of Max's plays, and Max is, of course, immediately jealous of him. But the movie never says that they have any romantic intentions with each other. He might truly just be a friend, but I feel like he would have probably been the best. Not that we learn much about this character, but I feel like, at least compared to the other two, he seems like a normal, sane person, and probably would have been a good match for her. Not saying like she needed to end up with anybody at the end of the movie, but I feel like if they were going to go that route, Peter would have probably been the best choice. I actually was hoping he'd be a little more plot relevant. Yeah, okay, I want to talk about Max and what happens to him in the movie, because I forgot about a lot of it, honestly. You know, where he kind of starts at the top. He's, you know, almost like the king of Rushmore in a sense, and then he finds out about just grades and being expelled, and he tries to pursue this teacher, and it doesn't work out, and then he kind of turns it into like a prank war with Herman until he ends up getting arrested. And I actually would have thought that Max would have been arrested sooner in the movie, especially because at like a later point, I don't know how he ends up being such good friends with Herman or something, where he can call Herman at any time in this movie and Herman will just immediately show up to where Max wants to meet him. And Miss Cross is kind of almost the same way, unless it's the times when Max pisses him off. The fact that these two adults, they're able to just kind of come to his beck and call is really funny to me. But there's a part where Herman summons Max to a graveyard, and he's like sitting in front of his mom's grave, and he mentions to Max, like, oh, why did you call me here? And Max is like, I was planning to have this tree crush you to death, and that's not even a joke, by the way, because Herman later moves a branch on said tree, and it's this really big tree, and it actually does fall. Like, Max was literally planning to kill this guy, and it was like, the line was delivered in a way like it was a joke, but like Max was 100% serious, and we get to see that later, that it would have absolutely killed him. But then Max changes his mind, and then I find it interesting when he ends up having to go to public school, and you can tell immediately he doesn't really fit in, but then at the end he ends up making a play there, which I find it funny they have to have the local police there because they know that Max is going to be up to something, and the play goes off fine and everything, and everyone's like happy at the end or whatever. So he does end up having to adapt to being at that school, and I do like that he, you know, is out of Rushmore permanently and just kind of has to make the best of his situation of being at this school. And then when he goes to that school, I forgot what it's called. It's just some like public school or whatever. It's like a regular high school. He ends up meeting this girl. I think her name's Margaret, if I remember correctly. Let me see. Yeah, her name's Margaret Yang. She's pretty cool. I felt really bad for her character too, where she, as soon as she meets Max, she's like trying to befriend him, and he's just kind of ignoring her. I think it's because he's so focused on like trying to win back Miss Cross, and there's like all this other stuff going on. They could see why he's like not really interested in trying to make friends. But I also felt bad for him in that Dirk is kind of his only like actual friend. He does end up befriending Margaret at the end, and I think they end up even dating or something by the end. But yeah, this kid that just doesn't really have any friends, and he doesn't seem to really care, and then he finally meets someone that like genuinely wants to be his friend, and like wants to be his friend immediately, and he just completely ignores it. Like, she ends up bringing a plant to his house, and Max's dad says like, oh, he's not here, and then Max is in the window. And I'm glad that Margaret at the end gets to call him out, like before the play and before they end up becoming like boyfriend and girlfriend or whatever, but Margaret gets to call him out on it and being like, hey, you know, you treated me pretty badly earlier. And he does, I can't actually remember if he apologizes or whatever, but I think he just kind of acknowledges that. And they end up like making up at the end and stuff. But yeah, I felt bad for her because of that. I'm trying to think what else I wanted to say. I kind of want to just mostly go over those things. You know, there is actually one part of the movie I forgot to mention with Max's whole journey. I skipped a point between when he ends up in public school and when he ends up doing the play at the end and everybody like likes him and stuff. There's a part I find really interesting I completely forgot about, where Max ends up getting arrested for one of his like pranks or whatever to try to kill Herman, and I think that gets him expelled out of the public school or something, presumably. And then he ends up actually going to it's like a month in the movie, I think it's like November or something, might have been November, December, might have been like 1 or 2 months, where Max isn't going to school and he's working at his dad's barber shop. And I keep thinking about this conversation he has with his dad. And Max's dad, I want to touch on for a second, is like the nicest person in the world, where he kind of just lets Max do whatever. And he, at the end of the movie, when some of the characters are like, wait, Max told us that you were like a neurosurgeon or something, his dad isn't even mad about Max lying about it, and he even makes a joke about the neurosurgeon thing or whatever. He's like, nope, I'm a barber, but people think I'm a neurosurgeon or whatever. I feel like there was probably some kind of joke in there. I think because Max says something about cutting up brains or something, but except his dad cuts hair. So I could sort of see it. At first I thought like, okay, maybe Max is just embarrassed about, you know, what his dad does, and everyone thinks he's like a neurosurgeon and stuff. But yeah, the dad isn't mad that Max lied about that or anything. He's like very nice to all the people that Max introduces him. He doesn't question why Max is like, some of Max's only friends are like grown adults, but whatever. And then he asks Max like, oh, are you planning to go back to school? And Max is like, no. And the dad doesn't get on his case about it or anything. He just kind of accepts like, okay, Max is gonna do what he wants to do. But he tells him of like, oh, I'm a barber, I'm happy as a barber, but I thought you wanted to be like a senator or a politician or something, or that you were gonna like go down a different path. And Max is just kind of like, oh no, I'm a barber's son, you know, that's it for me. And Max does eventually, you know, end up not going into that and kind of going back to what he always does of this starting the clubs and whatever. And you get to see that with his outfit choices too. I also find that really interesting, where for most of the movie Max is wearing the Rushmore uniform of like this blue suit, and it looks very fancy, and that hat that he wears, even after he gets kicked out of the school, like he's trying to cling to that, because that identity of being a Rushmore student is kind of all that he has really. And then once he works with his dad, he ends up wearing more like kind of modest clothes. He isn't running around in suits anymore. It's kind of like his I don't know what to do with myself sort of phase, I guess. And then once he ends up going to school again and picking up activities and befriending people and stuff and sort of doing better for himself, he ends up wearing suits again. But he ends up wearing this green suit, which I found kind of interesting. Like, he's back to his kind of identity of wearing the suits and stuff, but without it being the Rushmore uniform. I always find like the costumes and why characters are dressed the way they're dressed in Wes Anderson movies just really interesting. It kind of reflects a lot about their characters and stuff. But yeah, I keep thinking about that conversation that Max had with his dad, where he sort of gives up on his dreams in a sense, and his dad's like, oh, I didn't expect you to do that. Just the fact that his dad is fine with like anything that Max will do. I think that's really nice. I mean, I do think his dad should have like a little bit more control over Max's life, in the sense of like, hey, your kid is like was trying to kill someone and is trying to romantically pursue an adult woman, and I think you need to have a talk with your kid. And he also like literally got arrested at one point. Like maybe like rein him in just a little bit, but the supportiveness of the dad, I think, is really nice, honestly. Let me think, what else? I liked the music in this. It kind of reminded me of like the music in Bottle Rocket a little bit. I feel like the early Wes Anderson movies are kind of interesting. I think this is like the second or third one. I think this is like the second one. Because I talked about this with Bottle Rocket as well, where these early like 90s Wes Anderson movies, kind of before he finds his path of making this sort of dollhouse looking sets and everything being a certain way, to the point where it's like parodied now. It's like the Wes Anderson style of filmmaking and whatever. The early ones are interesting, where the characters still feel the same, which I really like. They've always kind of felt the same to me, for the most part. But the music and the settings and stuff don't really feel sort of quirky, or I feel like a lot of the later Wes Anderson movies, they almost remind me of like a play with the way they're staged. But the earlier ones don't feel like that. They almost feel kind of more like indie in a sense. And I kind of miss that a little bit. I think I didn't really care for Bottle Rocket, but I liked Rushmore. I didn't like everything with Rushmore, but I liked Rushmore. I feel like it's kind of a happy medium in a sense, where, or not like a happy medium. I'm trying to think of the right words, but like it doesn't. Wes Anderson hasn't really found like his visual recognizable style yet at this point, because I think this is like the second movie. I'm not gonna pull up the whole list of all the movies, but you can like tell this is one of the earlier ones. I mean, this is still like from the 90s and such, late 90s. Actually, yeah, let me see. Shoot, I'm trying to see. Yeah, because Royal Tenenbaums is from 2001, so I think that's the next one. And with that one, that I think is kind of the point where it's like the visual style, it's like we're locked in and stuff. But with this one in Bottle Rocket, you don't really have that. I just find that really interesting. Not to say that, anything against the costumes or performances or anything with this movie. I just find that really fascinating. I think there's something about it that makes the movies feel more like the characters aren't so much as like characters in these specific roles, and more kind of real. I mean his characters always feel like very real people, but I think with his first two movies, I think just because it's these more kind of normal settings, everything's not so precise. Like when I think about like Moonrise Kingdom, for example, and the way everything's described in like such specific detail, or the Life Aquatics kind of the same way. Those are the two that kind of come to mind. With this one, with Rushmore and with Bottle Rocket, we're not at that point. It just feels kind of more chill, and I kind of like that, actually. It makes it it's like very easy to follow this one and Bottle Rocket. It's just kind of more of like things happening to people. I mean, there is a plot in that they're both trying to pursue this woman is kind of the main thing, actually. There's no like grand heist or whatever in this, like there is in a lot of other Wes Anderson movies. But I just like that it's a bit more simple, but it's not as I felt like I was a little bit bored with Bottle Rocket. I feel like this one I was invested. I just don't like the whole thing of the lengths this 15-year-old will go to try to impress this adult woman that would never be interested in him because he's 15, but there's also other reasons, especially because he acts so childish about it at the beginning. Like there's this part when Max admits his feelings to Miss Cross. They're at like a dinner and he's kind of being really whiny and being like, oh, I love you, that's why I'm mad at and getting mad at her friend Peter or whatever, where he's like causing a scene in public. Basically, he eventually kind of grows out of that sort of more childish outbursts later on. It kind of takes him a while, but yeah, that's the part of this movie that I think doesn't really make it fun to rewatch or anything, but like there's a lot of other stuff in it that I liked. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop here just because I'm actually a little late to I'm doing a movie with the movie group tonight, and I picked out the movie. It's gonna be Flash Gordon, so you're gonna get a review of that from me at some point, unless I like pre-record it really far. I don't know, but yeah, it's nice to be watching Wes Anderson movies again. I liked Rushmore for the most part. I'm okay with having it on DVD. I don't know how often I'll watch it, but I own it now. And the next one's going to be Fantastic Mr. Fox, which I had to watch the first 20 minutes of just to see if the DVD worked. And the DVD was like a little funky, so I have my fingers crossed it'll work. But that one I remember liking a lot, and I'm looking forward to rewatch that, so that might be a longer video. I'll probably have more to talk about. We'll see. All right, so see you next time for the next Wes Anderson movie review in that sense, or not movie review, my thoughts. You know what I'm trying to say. All right, bye bye.